It looks like we have a series. The Spurs tie it up 2-2. I'm Coach Mike. Welcome back to the film room. And we saw some major adjustments in this game that we need to go over because the Spurs just held OKC to one of their worst playoff performances in their history. And one of the major adjustments we saw in this game, we can identify in this play right here. This is probably the most important play we saw early on in this game to show us exactly what the Spurs changed going into game 4. You can see Harper harassing and getting all over SGA here. But I want you to look at Dylan Harper here because he's going to be the key. Because all series long, what were the Spurs doing? Showing heavy gaps, helping from the gap, giving up these kick out threes. But in this game, watch Harper. He sees SGA driving. He's going to stunt and recover the shooter. Now, I know McCain has had a huge game, especially in game 3. So the priority is taking away those shots. But we saw that all night long, staying on shooters, allowing SGA to go one-on-one against Castle. They still showed help with Wemby, and you can see Wemby on the weak side here still get into that low man. He's guarding Caruso, but then he switches out so that he can be the low man at the basket. So that's going to stay pat in this game. Wemby's still going to protect the basket, even though he's going to be a little bit more aggressive on the three-point line, which we'll get to in a little bit. But let's stay on SGA because it was clear they wanted SGA to beat them one-on-one. Now, they weren't abandoning their gap presence. They were still heavily shifted. But even here, guarding someone like Lou Dort, Champagnie is still going to stunt and recover out. And look, he gets the deflection here because all series long, SGA has been used to driving into gaps and playing out of it for his teammates. But in this game, that's not going to be the case. They're going to get a lot of deflections, even in rotation. So you can see Castle doing a great job of making SGA's catches as hard as possible. He does get the ball. He does get a drive in this play. Wemby switching out, getting to the low man here. And then on this drive, I just want you to watch. There's a lot more aggressive from the Spurs in rotations to get out to these three-point shooters, and they get the deflection and they get into a scramble situation here. Another deflection. Again, just not letting OKC pass it around the perimeter. That's been the biggest adjustment here in Game 4. We also saw not only the stunt and recover, not only the priority on the shooters, but off the ball being a lot more physical and face guarding SGA. We've seen them face guard SGA throughout this series occasionally, but not to this level of physicality and focus. You can see Harper just staying attached to SGA most of this possession. And how do I know it was so physical? Because there were a lot more off-ball fouls called. You can see, again, Harper off the ball, face guarding, top locking. SGA gets called for a foul. Later on, again, Harper over here. He's going to get called for another foul as SGA is trying to get free from him. And, they picked up a decent amount of fouls guarding SGA in this manner. But the good thing if you're the Spurs is you have a lot of weapons to throw at him. I mean, Castle was the primary defender all night on SGA, and he did a phenomenal job. You can see him here face guarding SGA, gets behind the play, but gets back in it, cuts him off. Wemby doing a good job there. Harrison Barnes stunting recovery. Now Castle got him on an island. And then he gets the moving screen on Dort. And Castle was phenomenal all night long, extending the point of attack on SGA. They weren't sending traps. We never saw that here early in this Game 4. They were just allowing Castle to pressure him as much as they could. And as long as he stayed out of foul trouble, he was doing a great job. Now, even when he did get into foul trouble, the Spurs weren't abandoning the game plan. You can see he gets fouled, gets called for a foul right here. I think that's his third one of the game, if I'm not mistaken. And then what do? They just put Harper right on him. So Castle stays in the game. He just guards someone else, Chet in this example, and then Harper's on SGA. And you can see that first change, Harper does a great job, forces a turnover. So you have these guys, you have Castle, you have Harper, you have Vassell, even a guy like Champagnie switching on to SGA here and doing a great job of guarding his own. Right, everyone's here stunting in the gap with Fox. Great job forcing SGA into a tough shot. Another major adjustment we saw in this game was how they were using Wemby. Now, the first thing, if you watched our Game 2 breakdown, we identified that OKC would put Wemby in a lot more ball screens in ways to get SGA an opportunity to attack him downhill. And usually, Wemby was waiting right around the elbow area for those attacks. But in this game, they really changed the level of Wemby's help and drop coverage in these ball screens. So instead of being all the way in the paint, he was higher along the three-point line, so he could take these attacks a little bit more aggressively, give up less ground from the get-go, and stay with SGA, not just sagging back to the basket, but really contesting those pull-ups. Wemby made it his mission, it seemed like, in this game, not to get scored on or over by SGA. You can see, again, SGA, we saw in game 2 him get a nice little bump and step back mid-range jump shot against Wemby. Not in this game. Wemby was taking those aggressively, swallowing him up, and using his length to make sure he was contesting all those pull-ups, which was not the case in previous games. Again, here, high ball screen for SGA with Hartenstein. And where's Wemby? He's not waiting back here in the paint. He's getting himself above the three-point line so he can take SGA right from the get-go and not give up these easy baskets to their MVP. Now, what does that open up? Well, you can see it opens up Hartenstein's role. And again, they don't want to help too much off of these shooters. So we'll get to that when we go to our look-ahead section and what maybe OKC can look to adjust from this game, but Hartenstein finish it there. But they're not giving anything to SGA in those ball screens because Wemby is being a lot more aggressive. We have a little handoff action, and all season long we've seen Wemby stay at this nail position, but now against SGA and OKC in this game, he is lifting up his attack, his drop level, so that he can be there to contest these kind of shots from SGA, the mid-range savant. Now, in past games, not only ball screens, but off the ball, Wemby was almost landlocked into the paint, right? That was the Spurs game plan. Let's keep Wemby in the paint. Everyone else rotate around him. And, if we give up some threes to these other players, that's fine. And you can see Wemby here making the decision, staying in the paint. He's going to cornet closeout, which means jumping in place to contest. He's not even coming out to contest the three. He's contesting in place because he doesn't want to leave the paint. We saw that all series long across all these games. Alex Caruso trying to drag him out of the paint here. Wemby staying in the paint, trying to get someone else to switch on to him. SGA driving to his gap strong side. Wemby just staying there. Doesn't even run out to contest, really. Staying in place to contest with that cornet closeout. Now, that was a huge adjustment in Game 4 because Wemby was no longer landlocked into the paint. You can see him here on the weak side, which he usually is, right? Lurking on that weak side for drives. But on these kickouts and scrambles, Castle almost gets a great blindside steal here on SGA. Vassell stunting and staying on McCain. But on this kickout, we've seen Wemby never leave the paint throughout this whole series. And this is the first time, I know it might be an underwhelming clip, but this is the first time we're really seeing Wemby contest in this way in rotation. All the other games, I promise you, he would have stayed right here. If Williams shoots this shot, he would just jump in place. Instead, this time, there's been a huge adjustment in game plan, right? He's coming all the way out to the three-point line to contest. Again, here, he's on the weak side. Swing, swing. Wemby's getting all the way out on McCain to contest at the three-point line. Use all his length to contest. Now, that opens up some offensive rebounding. There was a foul call at the end of that play on OKC, so it didn't end up being important. But it does open up some offensive rebounding, but still, they are not... You watch the post-game press conferences of the Spurs, they do not want to give up any more open threes to all these guys have been knocking them down. Again, Wemby contesting hard, not jumping in place with the cornet closeout, contesting hard, getting himself to the three-point line. Big change for San Antonio. Other keys just to mention, we saw a change in Wemby's minutes. So in the last two games, he was being subbed out around the 7-minute mark, coming back at the 3-minute mark. In this game, Wemby actually stayed in. Even as SGA went to the bench early, Wemby stayed in. It looked like San Antonio wanted to press their early advantage, keep Wemby in the first quarter longer. He was subbed out around 3 minutes and came back in with, I think, 30 seconds to go. So using Wemby's minutes a lot more in the first quarter to press an advantage, to gain that early advantage if you're San Antonio. Great back tip there by Vassell. We also saw a lot more pressure on McCain, who just had a big game in Game 3. Picking him up early when they switched onto him, just harassing him as much as they could. McCain really did not get any space to breathe in this game. Even we saw in a previous clip, Wemby closing him out hard. And then last thing I'll say with the other key adjustments is San Antonio was a lot more aggressive, looking for steals in this game. We can see Castle against Caruso, who's been lighting it up from three, but just watch, we call this a sniper steal, going they usually throw these inbound passes, these entry passes to the elbow, and that big usually has his back turned, just holding the ball on the outside shoulder. So you're able to get this kind of sniper steal from the weak side, whether it's on the pass to the elbow or on the dribble here from Hartenstein. Castle coming out of nowhere. And just the Spurs were so much more aggressive in this game, hunting turnovers and hunting plays like that instead of just protecting the paint. Now, as we look ahead to Game 5, what can we expect from OKC as some counters? Well, the first counter I'm going to bring up is that pick and roll coverage. So if Wemby's going to come up higher in those ball screens, well, those rolls and prioritize SGA's pull-ups a little bit more, those rolls are going to be open. And honestly, to start this game, Hartenstein hit 4 of these floater shots in a row, and we'll just quickly show them. But that's going to be the trade-off, right? The one thing San Antonio is willing to live with in their game plan is the Hartenstein, or whatever the 5-man is, rolling open. They prioritizing shooters more. They're prioritizing SGA in slightly different ways, but they are not prioritizing Hartenstein or whoever that 5-man is, Jay Will. So some adjustments we might be able to see is, well, what's Chet doing, right? Can Chet be their 5-man? Guarding Wemby, can he be that 5-man where they can get Wemby into pick and rolls against Chet as that roller, that short roller? Now we can get Chet going maybe in the mid-range or popping from 3. Chet tries to take Wemby one-on-one here, but OKC tried to experiment with lineups as Chet the 5, but they could never get Wemby in a ball screen, and we know that's hard because sometimes he'll just go and guard their low man in their kind of matchup zone situation. But if OKC can get Wemby as the primary defender against Chet and put him in ball screens, maybe we could finally see a Chet game going forward in Game 5, and Chet's been really held in check this entire series. Now, if they are going to be more aggressive with their 5-men on the 3-point line, whether it's Kornet in this play or Wemby, well, maybe we could see some more designed like high-low looks for OKC. You can see the step-up screen, Chet setting it, getting the switch, poor switch or whatever this coverage was supposed to be from OKC, but he's rolling wide open. And if Kornet's going to prioritize closing out these guys because they don't want to give up these threes, well, now we can get some triangle passes, some high-low passes there. And again, looking to get Chet going there. Another thing we could see more of is if they're going to be aggressive and face guard SGA, could we see him more so embody a Curry kind of aspect to his game with these off-ball cuts? And instead of just looking to get the ball, can we see him curl more? Can we see him back cut more? Use his off-ball agility, right, against these physical face guards and these off-ball screens. Can OKC kind of get him to some of these cuts like the Warriors have always done against Curry, against these face guard looks? And when SGA does get the ball, if they know San Antonio is not selling out, well, then you need to create more space for him. And you can see later in the game, they're down 20, so there's not much more film we need to watch. But Caruso is going to cut through just to give SGA a little bit more space to operate, knowing the Spurs aren't coming to double him, knowing that they're just not going to sit there in the gap and kind of zone up behind him like they were doing in those previous games. Now they're staying more man-to-man, limiting shooters. So SGA is going to have a little bit more room if they want to create that for him. But then SGA needs to make him pay, and guys like Vassell, Castle, and Harper did a phenomenal job on these islands all night long, which is why San Antonio tied the series and had one of their best defensive performances of this series and hold OKC to one of their lowest scoring outputs in their playoff history, actually their second lowest playoff output in OKC history. So this series, it seems like, is just starting. Maybe we'll even get to a Game 7, and if we do, make sure you're subscribed to see all the latest breakdowns. As always, I'm Coach Mike with Lockdown Defense. Keep up the hard work.